Of all the things in our galaxy, I think most of us can agree that the sun is pretty darn powerful. It's pretty crucial to life and could also very easily end all life in no time at all. So needless to say, a being who is the living manifestation of the sun would be pretty powerful, right? Well, that's exactly what Apalla is. Apalla first appeared in Doctor Strange Volume 2, number 22 in January of 1977 after she learned that the creators were plotting to replace stars in order to gain power. She created a human form and traveled to Earth to help Doctor Strange. She even saved the hero from an attack of the demon Visa Majoris, using her ability to produce blasts of heat that are equivalent to the power of the sun. So needless to say, she could probably absolutely destroy anyone who is less powerful than a literal star. But despite that, at the end of the story, she actually lost her power and her memory, but instead fell in love with humans, because apparently we're just that great. Despite being a member of the Avengers for quite some time, the superhero known as Jack of Hearts seems to be one that is often forgotten about. Jack Hart was the son of a brilliant scientist and on his mother's side, an alien, with her being a member of the Contraxian race. While he gained some advantages from his mother's alien heritage, his father had created a ridiculously efficient liquid sci-fi fuel called Zero Fluid. Exposure to Zero Fluid is what forced his body to undergo mutation, allowing him to project powerful beams of concussive energy from his body. Unfortunately, this energy was also notoriously hard for Jack to control, which led to the character becoming a pretty tragic one, with a fairly checkered past while still ultimately being an incredibly good-hearted person. His passing and resurrection was featured prominently in Avengers Disassembled, and he did have a pretty prominent relationship with Jennifer Walters' She-Hulk, so hopefully if that show gets a second season, we will see his character finally show up in the MCU, giving the hero the attention he deserves from the mainstream. Being an Asgardian and the actual brother of Thor, it's actually incredibly unfair how Balder the Brave has never been able to garner much of a spotlight for himself. Balder the Brave is the Asgardian god of light, which obviously gives him light-based powers, but he is also often seen with speed-based powers as well, as he is the most agile of all the Asgardians. In Norse mythology, it's Balder's passing that is supposed to actually kick off Ragnarok. He plays an important role in the mythology and has played a role in quite a few Asgardian Marvel stories, but he's just never been able to reach the heights of popularity that his half-brother Thor and adopted brother Loki are able to generate. I mean, he hasn't even showed up in the MCU until he was only slightly mentioned in the second season of the Loki TV show, and even that mention only pointed out that Balder, Odin's son, never gets recognized. But funnily enough, Balder is not the only seemingly neglected Asgardian. While Asgardian heroes like Thor, the Warriors 3, Heimdall, Valkyrie, and even Loki get tons of time in the spotlight, others like Kelda Stormrider get all but lost to history. Kelda is the Norse goddess of winter storms, ice, lashing rain, and churning clouds, which sounds very much like a power set that would put her in league with Thor himself. She possesses all the powers of Asgardians that we expect, with enhanced attributes and abilities, and was even considered to be one of the higher ranking Asgardian gods, especially due to her gentle nature. Once she was resurrected by Thor after the Ragnarok cycle, she sought new experiences within Midgard and fell in love with her husband, Bill Cobb. Even though Kelda eventually bit the dust, her ghost still wasn't done fighting and even assisted Thor in the fighting against Kull Borson. Next up, Jack Kirby introduced Machine Man in Marvel's 10-issue adaptation of 2001: A Space Odyssey. As X-51, he was created by Dr. Abel Stack, being his 51st attempt that actually succeeded in creating artificial life. Unfortunately for everyone involved, Stack then lost his own life in the process, leaving X-51 to wander the planet alone. It was later on that Marvel would introduce X-51 to the main Marvel universe as Machine Man. X-51, now assuming the identity of Aaron Stack, vowed to fulfill his creator's dream of human and robot coexistence. He became a fugitive from the military in a world fearful of machines. His encounters were honestly pretty dark sometimes too, with one of his first outings having him face off against an extremist, dismantling and reprogramming a malevolent computer, and navigating a society suspicious of artificial beings. Despite having many run-ins with the Avengers, even being a part of both the main team and the West Coast Avengers, the character just never really got that much mainstream traction. Griffin Gogal was just an ordinary plumber with a smoking habit, doing his ordinary job when an elderly psychologist couldn't afford to pay the plumbing bill. So instead, this psychologist offered to cure Griffin's smoking habit through hypnosis. The psychologist was actually an alien, and the hypnosis had the added benefit of unlocking Griffin's superhuman superhuman abilities, which are basically just the same abilities as Superman and the ability to perform any skill at a quote ultra level. With his new powers, he went out to try and find a new purpose, applying to be a part of a bunch of different teams. It was with the Revengers though where he got himself arrested and he ended up in prison and hasn't really been seen again since 2016, as far as I can tell. The original hero named 3D Man made his debut in Marvel Premiere number 35 in April of 1977 as test pilot Chuck Chandler, who was kidnapped by Skrulls. Chandler sabotaged a Skrull spacecraft and fled, but unfortunately Chuck's brother Hal arrived just in time wearing his sunglasses to see Chuck disappear in a flash of light as the Skrull craft exploded. In an incredibly weird twist of events though, it turned out that Chuck became a two-dimensional being imprinted on Hal's sunglasses. When Hal concentrated, he could now somehow release Chuck and they would merge together into a being with 3 times the strength, speed, and stamina of a regular person. As might not be a surprise to some, the character did eventually fade into obscurity. But then, Delroy Garrett Jr., a disgraced Olympic athlete who decided to turn to religion, became the second equally obscure 3D Man when he became the spokesperson for the Triune Understanding, a religious cult whose leader gave Delroy the powers of 3D Man. Miracleman is a hero steeped in legal battles. Originally known as Marvel Man, this hero was created as a replacement for the original DC hero Captain Marvel, or Shazam, when publishers Len Miller and Sons, who held the rights to reprint Fawcett Publications' Captain Marvel stories in the UK, were denied the rights to the character by DC Comics. Eventually, Marvel Comics gained the right to the character with Neil Gaiman as a writer, and so Miracleman was born. An orphan named Mike Moran became the Air Force's choice for the experimental Project Zarathustra. This project created a superhuman from alien DNA and, using a device, implanted it into Mike's own consciousness. Now, whenever Mike says the word Kimota, he becomes Miracleman, gaining superhuman strength, speed, stamina, and longevity, as well as flight, invulnerability, energy manipulation, telepathy, telekinesis, and the ability to just get better over time in powers, and apparently in his stories too. Though he was created as basically a copy of the character Shazam, Miracleman is arguably leagues and bounds more powerful, able to do almost anything with his powers, not to mention his stories are much more powerful and mature than those of Billy Batson. Kelsey Leigh Kirkland was a normal school teacher until she was caught on the front line of a battle between the Avengers and the Wrecking Crew. She used Captain America's shield to save her family and Captain America from a blow, causing her extensive injuries, but because of her bravery, she was reborn on Otherworld, where she was chosen by Brian Braddock, the original Captain Britain, to inherit the mantle and powers of Captain Britain. Wielding the Sword of Might and swearing to protect her homeland from evil, her time as Captain Britain was marked by a ruthless dedication to justice, and she battled adversaries like Morgan Le Fay and the Wrecking Crew. It was then that she realized that her heroic identity came with a huge consequence, being that if she revealed her true identity to her children, it would endanger their lives. Under the codename Lionheart, Kelsey sought out revenge against the former Captain Britain for what had happened to her, and in the end, she learned the error of her ways and let go of the mantle to be a mother to her children once again. The iconic Marvel sidekick Rick Jones is a staple of the Marvel Universe. He is most notably the close friend of Bruce Banner, and kind of the whole reason that Bruce even became the Hulk. Rick's biggest claim to fame is being the guy Bruce had to go and save from the Gamma explosion, which then gave Bruce his smashing persona. But the thing that people don't really know is that Rick got his own Hulk-like persona, and he named himself A-Bomb. After being exposed to a weapon powered by gamma radiation designed for use against the Hulk, Jones was mutated by Intelligentsia into hulking out into a form similar to the Abomination. Jones's skin takes on a scaly sort of appearance, his eyes change color, and his hair just disappears. He gains an extra 4 feet and 1,800 pounds, and now, as a Hulk, Rick actually sets himself apart not just in his appearance, but even with gaining an extra power to camouflage himself at will, blending into the background. He was actually pretty important to a few stories, but eventually found himself cured of radiation by Doc Green, which took away his hulking out ability. Thank you guys so much for watching today on Top 10 Nerd. My name is Adam Andrews. I will catch you all on the flippy flop, and even if I don't, stay safe and peace out, nerds.